There you go.
If we get into IT trouble, I can always turn to my daughters for their help.
Oh, good. Yeah.
They're the ones that guide me. So yeah, so the Connecticut River is 410 miles long, extending, as I said, from the Canada US border down to Long Island Sound. It's actually the source of 70% of the fresh water that flows into the Long Island Sound. So the bulk of that water. The majority of the watershed, the 12,000 square miles, is in Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. There's about 2 acres in the state of Maine and probably another 10 to 15,000 acres in the province of Quebec. But so most of our work is in those 4 states, and we have a whole range of programs. I'm really going to focus on the restoration programs because that's what I work on, and that's mostly what we do up north here. But we have a lot, we have river cleanups. We do a lot of work with regulatory issues, regulations, in relation to water quality, habitat, that sort of thing. And we as an organization have been doing this work since 1952, so 70 years now. So I had hoped my map would show the Nulhegan. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the Nulhegan is right up here in the northern part of the watershed in the upper Connecticut portion. But again, we do work pretty much throughout the watershed. We haven't actually done a lot of work in the Nulhegan, mostly because we have such great partners already working there. The Fish and Wildlife Service, the Friends Group, Trout Unlimited. So I certainly will say we're always available to help in any way that is useful. Certainly reach out to us if there's a way we might be able to help. But there's lots of great work already going on, so we haven't really worked there. Same is true in the White River watershed with the White River Partnership. They have a great program. They do lots of good work. Again, always there, ready to help, but when we're needed. If you have questions, feel free to jump in. If you raise your hand, I might or might not see it.
I'm interested in the Canadian piece up there. Is that a good relationship, or we pump a lot of stuff north? Yeah, but
there is not really much of a relationship, just because at Hereford, East Hereford, there's not really a population base. There's not the government agencies. They're more over Coaticook, Magog, Sherbrooke.
yeah.
I would love to work there. There's, having driven down through there, there's certainly a need, but it's, just there's not that relationship. And of course, there's the border. And, we
Right.
actually were looking at a potential project on Hall Stream in New Hampshire. And, the border, the river has moved, or Hall Stream has moved, but the border has not. And so there's the issue of, well, are we planting trees in Quebec, or are we planting them in New Hampshire? I'll plant them anywhere, but the Border Patrol may not agree with that. So yeah, it's a challenge. I would love to do it. It just whether it'll happen or not, who knows? Yeah, it would be great. So there's sort of 5 or 6 different kinds of restoration projects that I want to talk about today. Just briefly, in all these cases, our restoration programs are really geared towards restoring riparian areas, restoring floodplains, reducing erosion, protecting water quality, improving fish and wildlife habitat. So we do tree plantings, we biostabilize banks, river banks. I'll talk about that. Remove berms, restore wetlands, you name it, we're out there doing it. Remove dams, I don't see that on here, but yes, remove dams and replace culverts. So one of our big programs, and this is what I started with Roger and Susie back in 2008, were sort of the traditional tree plantings. That is, restoring riparian buffers, restoring floodplain forest. The photos on the left are a site we planted back in, I want to say 2013. So that the upper photo is when we were planting in the spring of 2013. The bottom photo, left photo, is back in 2020. So 7 years later, how the trees that we planted have grown. And it's still a very open woodland. It's obviously not an enclosed floodplain forest yet, but it's well on its way to getting there. And you go out there in the first few years, it's really discouraging. And it's like, boy, it doesn't look like anything. But then all of a sudden, after 5 or 6 years, it actually can really take off. We've now done more than 115 acres along more than 12 miles of river and stream. So it's really satisfying work. It's really neat to see these take off and do well. We are also exploring, so that's the traditional tree planting. You buy trees from a nursery, they can be container stock or bare root stock. You go out, dig holes. Dusty has a great crew. We work with Northwoods a lot on these plantings, and plant the trees that way. We are also exploring some sort of alternatives where we actually plow up old hay fields and then seed that in, collect seeds in the spring of the silver maple, the elm, the other native trees, and then spread those on the bare soil. And we've just started doing about 10 acres of that up on the Johnson Farm WMA up in Canaan. And we're hoping that it will be another, sort of tool in our toolbox as far as restoring these habitats.
Have you seen any success with that so far?
We did some really small plots down actually on the Barton River up north of Orleans, and yeah, it looked very promising. We did not do the direct seeding, so we just relied on the natural seed rain from the nearby trees, and I think that was a really limiting factor. We're just not having seeds, and silver maple and the other floodplain trees do mast, which is they don't produce seed every year. So like this year was a really good year. We were able to collect something like 65 gallons, I should say Northwoods was able to collect 65 gallons of silver maple seeds this spring and spread it on those 10 acres. The last 2 years, there were absolutely no silver maple seeds. So it's sort of a, if you're relying on that natural seed rain, it's kind of hit or miss. So yeah, I think it has great promise. It will be interesting to go out there, maybe not this fall, but next fall and see how it looks, see if we get the really dense growth of native trees that we have seen we actually see on old cornfields. So some of the old cornfields on the Johnson Farm, they stopped plowing them when it became the wildlife management area. And in 2 years, there were like tens of thousands of seedlings growing there. So that was sort of the motivation for giving it a try, seeing if we could actually do this also. But yes, we will see. I will let you know.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Another thing that we do often in conjunction with tree plantings is building benches using soil lifts. So this is a site on the Ammonoosuc Conservation Trust land on the Upper Ammonoosuc in Lisbon, New Hampshire. The upper left photo, this is the eroding bank that was there previously. There were some native shrubs growing there, but they were being undermined by the erosion. So what we do is come in with, with heavy equipment, with excavators, and actually dig out the upper part of the floodplain, lower it down to what you see in the upper right here, and then put what are called soil lifts. So you actually put like a coconut fabric or a natural material around the soil that holds it in place. Put a lot of dogwood and willow stakes in there. And then there's my cursor. We put these root wads in here. So these are actually the bottom 20 feet. I don't know how I did that. The bottom 20 feet of trees. So including like the 20 feet of the trunk of the tree plus the roots. You drive or place the trunk into the riverbank and with the roots facing out to the river. And that helps to stabilize, it's basically a kind of natural armoring. The nice thing with the roots is it creates really nice habitat for the fish. They get little eddies around the roots, you get sediment depositions, you get little pools and eddies and bars, and it creates really nice habitat for fish. And it also protects the riverbank. And the lower right photo is showing, yeah, stop doing that. But the lower right photo shows what happened this spring when the ice went out on the upper Ammo, and it landed on the benches. It kind of went over the root wads, and they did exactly what they're supposed to do. So, yeah, real good, again, for, great for creating habitat and reducing erosion and increasing deposition. So they're not simple projects. We've probably done 10 or so of these through the last 5 or 10 years. A lot of permitting involved and that kind of stuff, but really good at, you wouldn't do it everywhere. That's the kind of thing you do where there's serious erosion problems.
Wow.
Problem with doing this in the dark is I can't see my arrows.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Yeah.
So another thing we've done quite a few of, 20 dams in the last 10 or so years, is actually removing dams that are no longer being used. Photos on the left there, that's the East Burke Dam on the east branch of the Passumpsic River, right in the village of East Burke. But before photo, after photo, and another after photo on the lower right, showing how the recreation was really improved by doing this. Certainly the primary impetus for doing this is to improve aquatic organism passage to allow fish to go up and down the rivers. It's always really fun when the dam's being taken out. You see the operator of the excavator hop out, run down to a little puddle at the edge of the river and pull out a brookie or a rainbow or something. It's happened multiple times where the fish are already, as soon as you start removing the concrete and getting a more natural flow through there, the fish, they want to go upriver, so they're already there trying even while they're still doing the work. So it's always really satisfying, but also great benefits for sediment transport and of course for recreation. This was before the dam was removed. The pond upstream of the dam was really just a leach filled pond and no one used it. There was no real recreation going on, and now people swim and they boat, and a lot of use there. As of today, like I said, we've done 20 of these. I think today Mike Lynch is finishing up taking out some of the remnants of the Lyman Falls Dam just north of Bloomfield there. That was really, the dam had been breached and removed, I don't know how many years ago, but there were still issues for recreation because of the spikes and rebar and concrete. So we've been in there just trying to improve that, that safety for recreation really, while also maintaining the fishing hole there, because it's a really great spot for fishing. You always see, we have the excavator out there, and at the same time we have people out there fishing just downstream of the old dam there, taking advantage of that. So the challenge there was to maintain the quality fishing while also making recreation safer. And they also did some work down at the Wyoming Dam down in Guildhall this summer as well. They again make it safer for recreation and also better for sediment and for fish. We haven't done a whole lot of the culvert replacement projects. Ron Rhodes, who I work with at the Conservancy, has always said there's so much more work because you're not just removing something, you're putting something in. So, the towns want to make sure it's what's right for them, or the highway department. So it's actually a much more complicated job to take out a culvert, put in a bridge or a bigger culvert. But they are great projects. I think there's a lot have been done in the Nolhegan Basin, mostly through Trout Unlimited in partnership with Fish and Wildlife Service. I think we don't do a whole lot of it. Trout Unlimited does a lot of great work. So it's a great partnership or sharing of these projects. So we will do them. I think the last couple we did were really related to taking dams out. There was a dam being removed at the same time that there was a perch culvert, 200 feet upstream. So it didn't make sense to remove the dam if the culvert was still there. So it was kind of a dual project. I apologize. It's actually pouring rain here right now. So hopefully that doesn't drown out my voice.
It looks like Bruce has a question.
Oh, okay. Bruce, sorry.
Yes, I wondered if on the culvert replacement, you were using those braced arches?
You're definitely stretching my knowledge here.
It's something that's it's talked about a lot in the forestry community.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It allows a natural bottom under the culvert.
Yeah, like in looking at this example in the pictures here, though, I seem to have covered it up a bit. You can see we put a bridge in there so that we would have that natural cobble bottom in the stream. And I think all of the ones we've done, I can't tell you what type they are, but all of them do have a natural bottom just because, that allows the fish to move up and down better. You get that friction and you don't have, some of these culverts like you see under Interstate 91, it's basically like a shotgun. It's just like blasting the fish through there. They can go downstream, but they can't go back upstream, if there's any current because there's no roughness to the bottom of the culvert. So that's definitely a consideration, as far as what the specifics are, I can't speak to that. But yes, definitely something that is considered in the design. For the dam removals, the culvert replacements, we're hiring engineering firms that do a lot of these kind of projects, and they're able to, take those into consideration in the design. So, it's really good to have those partnerships as well. But yes, definitely something that I know is considered. I just don't know, if we've actually done, like I said, we've only done 4 of these, I think, so far. I'm sure Trout Unlimited is, thinking about that when they're doing projects.
I know I can't raise my hand, Bert Saldy. I was at Lyman Falls a couple weeks ago. Looks like you guys are pretty much done there. There was a few guys working, but nice job cleaning that up. I've been fishing that for over 25 years, and there was a lot of stuff there, a lot of rebar and concrete, of course. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate that. Glad that folks are appreciating that. Yeah, they were supposed to be out there in the river today if it didn't rain much last night, which I don't think it did up there, and taking those big sandbags out, putting some final stone around that big chunk of concrete that is staying in the middle, the one right upstream of that deep pool. But hopefully they got done today. Yeah, neat project. It's really fun to see that, and also maintaining some of the history. There's a lot of history with these dams, so you don't want to lose that, but you also want to have the environmental benefits and the fish and wildlife benefits.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we have done a fair amount as well is the strategic wood additions. So, putting wood and adding roughness to river and stream channels. Obviously Judd Kratzer and Fish and Wildlife and Trout Unlimited have done a huge amount of that in the Nolhegan Basin. We haven't had a need to do that there because there's already other groups working there. So our focus has been more the Waits River watershed, down by Glebe Mountain, which is, I believe, the West River watershed, kind of west of Brattleboro and Dummerston. But again, adding large wood to the streams, creating habitat, trapping sediment, creating scour pools, just again, to create better habitat for fish and wildlife. And that's a partnership. We mostly do that with Red Start Forestry out of Corinth. I don't know, Dusty, if we've done any of that with Northwoods or not. But, again, great projects, great benefits for fish and wildlife and for water quality and for the habitat. So yeah, we do that. And then I guess the final area I just wanted to mention is we do a lot of work on the relicensing of the hydroelectric dams on the Connecticut, in particular, the large dams like the Wilder Dam, Dodge Falls, McIndoe Falls, upstream of there, the 15-mile Falls Dam. So we do have staff who spend a lot of time going through these relicensing processes, which are like, they just drag on and on and on. It's a multi-year process, but making sure that when these dams are relicensed, they're relicensed for 40 and 50 years. So what we do now is going to make a difference down the road for a long time. So we want to make sure that they are doing it right in terms of ensuring that the flows are sufficient for fish and wildlife, that the flows are good for recreation. Sometimes it involves adding fish ladders, just making sure that the dam owners and operators are really doing all they can to help improve the habitats, improve the recreation opportunities. Again, lots of paperwork involved, lots of community engagement involved. Currently, the the relicensing is going on for the Wilder Dam, the Bella Falls Dam, the Vernon Dam, and a couple down in Massachusetts. So Kathy Erfer, who I work with, is right on top of that, of making sure they're doing the right thing. Very long, involved, and detailed work. So it's great that she's able to really focus on that.
Do you know how much power is generated from the
I
Connecticut?
don't know. I'm sure she has the numbers all in her head. I don't know. Certainly
Okay.
they're an important source of electricity for northern New England, and that is one of the nice thing that at least some of the electricity from these projects does go to northern New England versus Northern Pass and some of these other especially projects up in Quebec where it's they want to move the electricity through northern New England, but the benefits are really going to southern New England, and obviously they need electricity too, but it's sort of a balance. So but yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. And there's also a lot of smaller hydroelectric dams as well, often on the tributaries that are also, Kathy keeps an eye on those because they do have various relicensing that they have to do as well, and water quality certificates. So yes, it's very complex work. I'm glad she's doing it. I'm glad I get to go out and plant trees and work with folks like you all instead. That's where I want to be. So I think that's all I have. Yep, for slides. And I will try to unshare my screen if I can. And I'm happy to answer any questions. There's not a huge rush to get home. So it's only 5 or 10 minutes from here. So, but again, just, really excited to talk with you all, share what we're doing, and see some familiar faces, meet some new folks as well. Hopefully we will have a chance to work together more in the future.
Dave?
Hi everyone. I owe Fritz first off an apology. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a family matter that came up. Thank you all for participating. But Fritz, I'm sorry I wasn't able to introduce you. Thank you for presenting.
That allowed me to make it sound better than it really is. So no apologies needed. No worries.
So where are you working right currently?
This fall, we actually are mostly going to be working in the Passumpsic River right in Lyndonville. We have been working with the Passumpsic Valley Land Trust for, I want to say, 3 years now. They own own and fee several properties in Lyndonville, around Lyndonville that were old farmland, but haven't really, nothing's really been done with them over the past few years. I see it's getting dark out.
Yes.
Like picture, I don't know if this will help. That might make it worse. But so our primary project this fall is going to be doing about 5 acres of planting on a couple parcels they own. One is behind the Plaza Whites Market in Lyndonville, and the other is right up by the Sanborn Bridge, the light at the north end of town where 114 cuts off of Route 5. And Northwoods will be working with us up there, and we certainly encourage community participation and volunteers. So if you're interested in getting out and planting, I'm sure Dave can vouch for doing that. He's been out a number of times, and it's great to have folks come out, if it's for a few hours or a few days, whatever works for you to help with projects. So that's our main one in terms of tree planting this fall. As far as we talked about the dams at Lyman Falls in Wyoming. We have another one in Thetford that we will do a fairly small planting next spring. We're going to give the river a winter to sort of sort out where the channel wants to go on, like a small stream. You can be pretty confident that the river is going to stay where it is, but on some of these medium-sized rivers like the Pompanousik, they have a mind of their own. So we always wait a year and let the river figure out where it wants the channel to be, and then we work around that. We've lost a few trees not waiting before, so we learned our lesson, hopefully. Next spring, we have a 7-acre planting we're hoping to do down in Lyme, New Hampshire. So the work I do is mostly New Hampshire and Vermont. So we work both sides of the river. then who knows? The building those benches, installing the root wads. We did one up in Colebrook, just south of Colebrook this summer, right by the airport there. And then I guess it was not this summer, but the previous summer, we did that one on the Amanuset Conservation Trust land down in Lisbon. So we're kind of all over the place, and it's really, these are all volunteer projects. It's, we never force a project on a landowner. It's like we talk to them, we offer what we make recommendations, we offer what we think is best. And, it's really up to them, whether they're a conservation organization like the land trust or a private landowner. It's like, we're here for you. It's like, what do you want to do? If you ask me to plant Eurasian honeysuckle, I'm going to probably say no. No, I'm definitely going to say no. That's not what we do. We might hope you get rid of it. But we're willing to meet the landowner and like, what do you want to see happen here? And, how can we help? And we also, a lot of our, we organize, we plan the projects, we, order the trees, we hire the contractors, the engineers, but we also get the funding. It's like a lot of times it's like the landowner wants to do a great project, but they don't have the money to do it. But we're happy to apply for grants, make the resources available so that these projects can happen. So that, that's as much of what we offer as actually getting out there and planting trees.
That was going to be my next question, was what was the funding source? So what sorts of grants are you getting, like federal, state, or private?
It's everything. We get funds from the state of Vermont. Most of that's now channeled through the Watersheds United Vermont, which is a sort of statewide collaborative of different watershed groups, just because it's easier for the state to give them block grants, and then they give that money out to specific projects. Northwood Stewardship Center gets block grants from the state to provide the watershed crews that do a lot of the actual work, like the tree plantings and invasive plant removal. So they provide the crews. We get like National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grants. We've been really successful with them. We just got a U.S. Forest Service grant for work in New Hampshire doing these kind of projects. And then a lot of private foundations, probably the primary one being the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, which administers the Upper Connecticut River Mitigation and Enhancement Fund, which is actually money from the hydroelectric dams. So when they relicense the 15 Mile Falls dams like upstream of Barnet, the Commerstock, I'm blanking on the name here, I apologize. But the Comerford Dam, and then the one upstream of there, the larger one, part of the relicensing was to set aside money every year from their profits to fund environmental projects. And they fund all kinds of great work from White River north. So we've gotten a lot of funding from them. So for example, the project on the Passumpsic Valley Land Trust this fall has MEF funding, the Upper Connecticut River Mitigation Enhancement Funds. We'll probably use some of our National Fish and Wildlife Fund money. Northwoods is providing a crew with their, watershed crew with their state of Vermont funding. So it's really, pulling all the pieces together and making the projects happen. And then again, we will help with the plant, doing the planning, ordering the trees, arranging the planting crew. So it's a lot of mix and match, the dam removals, culvert replacements, the benching and root wads, those are expensive projects because you have to have the engineering, the permitting, so typically they're, at least a couple $100,000, but again, same sources of funding apply to these as well.
How big a staff do you have? Are there, that's a lot.
I would guess we have, we're hiring, so I'm not sure the specific number, but 17 to 19. Only, 3 of us are full-time on restoration projects. Then we have the 4 river stewards now as of 2 weeks ago. Each of them is basically assigned to a state. We have one that works in Connecticut, one in Massachusetts. They do less of the restoration work, more of the regulatory relicensing, that kind of thing. Kathy Erfer is based out of Brattleboro, so she was doing Vermont, New Hampshire. Now she's Vermont because we just hired a new steward for New Hampshire. So, they do some restoration work, and we have a couple other staff who help with restoration work, but it's really Ron Rhodes, Becky, Bud, and myself. That's our main focus. And then we work a lot with partners. I mean, we couldn't do it without the partners. These wouldn't happen, whether it's, Fish and Wildlife Service or Trout Unlimited or Northwoods or, I'm going to forget someone. I apologize right up front. And of course, the landowners, couldn't do it without the landowners.
Fritz, I know you mentioned multiple times Trout Unlimited, which I'm glad to see you work with, but have you worked at all with Ducks Unlimited, because they're the preeminent, conservation organization for wetlands areas?
Yeah, we haven't. A wetlands restoration is, we talk about it, we want to do it. It's a hard sell for landowners. That's really what it comes down to. We did interact some with, or work a little bit with, I think it's April Moulart, who was working over Ducks Unlimited over in the Lake Champlain Basin. They had some big funding to do wetlands restoration, and they had the same problem. It's really hard to convince landowners that this is what you should do. You should flood your hayfield. It would be great for wildlife. I mean, they would be awesome projects. It's just, we've tried doing them in the Memphremagog Basin. We've talked about them along the upper Connecticut, and I would love to do them. I really would. And with Ducks Unlimited or Fish and Wildlife, but hard sell, really hard sell. Vermont Fish and Wildlife has had a fair amount of success doing it, in the Memphremagog Basin, like along the Barton River, the Black River, some farmland in those areas where, it floods every year. It's not good farmland. They might get one crop of hay off it if they're lucky, and it's not great hay. So they've had some success in the South Bay Wildlife Management area, the Willoughby Falls Wildlife Management area, and some of the private lands around there. The Johnson Farm WMA already has a lot of great wetlands. There are potentially opportunities there, but there's already a lot of great wetlands there. But tough sell. Love to do
beaver, maybe,
Yeah, the beavers are always happy to help.
Well, it's finding a good cooperative landowner, and that's what a lot of times Ducks Unlimited does do. And there are landowners who do want, because they do have a conservation ethic, especially if they see, especially some farmers as they're starting to age out, and what the benefits long-term would be over, gain with selling or developing land. And just to, especially as we're seeing more and more flooding, how important wetlands can be to, mitigate, flood issues. And that's where I think some communities are very much in favor of doing wetlands restoration, because, as we see, flooding just in the last 10, 15 years has been getting worse and worse. I know I live in Waterbury. We were greatly impacted by, Irene, and there are a lot of places that are just, are going to want to see those benefits there long term, and willing to invest in it.
I think that you're exactly right. Both between the flooding and the water. I mean, wetlands are great for improving water quality, filtering out sediment and phosphorus and nitrogen. And obviously the habitat benefits. So there's a lot of really good selling points, and we have the ones that we have done so far have mostly been through, again, very limited number, but mostly through NRCS and Natural Resources Conservation Service. They've been able to sign up a few landowners who, as you mentioned, farmers who are retiring. There's not children who want to take over the farm. And, through NRCS, like the Wetlands Reserve Enhancement Program, it's good money. they get a good payment for because it is a permanent easement on the land, so they get paid for the easement. And it's, like I said, a good amount. It's not, peanuts. And but also the program, the WRE program, pays for the restoration work. So it will pay us to go in there and plant trees or the ones that I've worked on, we removed a berm. We actually didn't, sometimes you'll install a berm to flood a field, but in this case, it was a berm that was keeping water in a wetland from flooding an old cornfield. So we actually went in there, removed the berm so that the water could access the old cornfield. So there are definitely opportunities. It's just that, again, hard sell, but I mean, that's exciting. And if you know of projects in the Connecticut River or landowners who are interested, definitely direct them to us or to NRCS, and we'll see what we can make happen. Or Ducks Unlimited, it would be great to work more with Ducks DU. So
I'm sure the State Council of Ducks Unlimited would be definitely willing to work with you. Sometimes, again, it's all, if you have identified parcels that would be good, some of the Ducks Unlimited volunteers, might be willing to talk to landowners of the value. And, it all sometimes starts very grassroots. Sometimes, especially a lot of farmers, especially up in the Northeast Kingdom, they have a fear of nonprofits in the federal and state government. So if it comes from their neighbors, it sometimes is a better sell.
no, for sure. And so many of our projects, that's exactly how they start. It's not us knocking on their door. It's they come to us because their neighbor talked about the work they did with us or with TU or Ducks Unlimited or whomever. So no, and I think one of the key things is, there's a lot of great projects out there. We're happy to work in any capacity to support any organization making these projects happen. It's always great to be acknowledged, but we don't need, it's not about getting the credit. There's lots of good work to be done. So, we are here. I think of us as a resource for all these other groups, and, these other groups are a resource for us, and we all just work together and make these projects happen, and if it's us taking the lead, great. If it makes sense for TU or DU or someone up, Fish and Wildlife to take a lead, let's do it. There's no shortage of good projects.
Thanks.
Fascinating work. I'm going to enjoy watching this again, and I'll share it with anybody who wants to, because that was a lot of interesting information.
Fritz,
No,
where can we find out about the tree planting project dates?
It should be, it's probably not on there yet, but usually it's on the CRC website. And I apologize. I removed the slide that had that information, but ctriver.org, I believe.
Okay.
Could you send the
Yeah.
information to Mary and she'll get it
I
out to
can do that.
friends group?
That would be
And
great.
Yeah, and I'll put the dates in there. I think we just confirmed them this morning. So it'll be the last week of October, probably potentially into the first week of November. Hopefully we'll finish before the snow flies. We don't always succeed.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But no, yeah, I'll send that to you, Mary.
Wear gloves and
Yeah.
bring a shovel. Yeah.
If you have one, that's great. We do have a few shovels that we can provide. The key things is prepare to get muddy and wet and dirty and have a lot of fun and feel good at the end of good and sore at the end of the day for the great work you did.
Sounds great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
That was great. And thank your kids.
Oh.
They're still awake?
Yeah, I think I don't think they're doing their homework though.
Uh-oh.
I smell this pizza they ate, and now I think they might be watching movies.
Oh, okay.
But no, I will let them know. But thank you all again. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and I will send you that information, Mary. And yeah, keep the lines of communication open. We
That
would love
sounds
to
good,
work with
'cause
you all.
It'd be fun to hear the progress you make with that, particularly that planting, seeds. That's
Yeah, well,
So
to
we
plant the
take
seed, Fritz, there is a nursery that's sort of it's on Steve's land, but with the Essex County Natural Resource Conservation District. And, you know, Dusty and that crew have done a lot of work on it. So with all your need for trees and everything like that, it's you know, it'd be something to explore and talk about. I don't think it's getting as much use as it could use a little love, you know.
Yeah, they
I
had
don't know
that.
what you think, Steve, but I mean, that might be something to.
Oh,
Absolutely.
It's really exciting to see that, because we've really got to the point in Vermont and northern New England where the demand for trees is outstripping the supply. And that's part of the reason we only have that one big planting this fall in Lindaville, is because I couldn't get the trees this fall. You know, we're actually, for that one project, I'm buying trees from 4 different nurseries. And we have bought trees from the old Essex nursery when it was in Bloomfield there, but actually supported the application that the district put in for the funding for the new nursery. And so I'm real excited to see that going and have another, especially local source of trees to use for our planting projects. There's plenty of good work to do out there, but we need the trees. So,
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason for, you know, I didn't go into this, but we are doing a fair amount of monitoring and sort of, you know, not heavy research, but research on, you know, what's the best size of tree to plant, for example. Because if we can plant, you know, smaller trees do just as well as bigger trees, we can plant 2-year-old trees instead of 3-year-old trees, and then the nursery can, you know, they can turn over and have a higher turnover of trees and produce more trees that will be available to, you know, not just us, but to all the groups who are planting trees. There was something else I was going to say, but it has escaped my mind. But yeah, no, it's great to see that happening. And especially, again, we like to plant local. We like to use local resources, whether it's for removing dams, planting trees, sourcing our trees. You know, that's why we work with Northwoods and Mike Lynch and North Stratford and Northwoods, you know, and all you folks. So.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That's
Fritz.
Welcome. Thank you. Nice
well,
to see
thank you,
everyone.
kids,
Have a
too.
good evening.
Take care, you too.
Thanks, Fritz. Good to see you.
Yep, take care, Dusty. See you around, I'm sure.
All right, we finished that one. That was excellent. I think the next one we have is Dr. Gerhardt.
Oh, it's after Dr. Gerhardt.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, yeah,
Maddie.
Navi. Yep,
Now it's our poet
right.
who's here. Thank you. And this is for the Writing the Lands project. Remember that Rachel had introduced us to us, and that we decided to participate in. And I'm not sure, Judy, if you're familiar with that. I think you came in after we started it, but you are. Okay. So it's a collaborative project. We're at the point where we've just been fortunate in securing our poet. And then we have to have, like, Maddie will be working over the next year, and we will be putting together the information that we want to be there. But this is our chance to say hello to Maddie and hear from him. It's Maddie Adams.
Hi there.
I think you're from Guilford, right?
I am. I live in Guilford down on the Mass border. Lifelong New Englander, although I've had walkabout, been out in the West for a while, and got back here full time 5 years ago. And grew up in the woods, playing in the woods. I'm a natural scientist. I studied chemistry in school. I enjoy forestry, mushroom foraging. I grow my own shiitakes here in the woods. Trout fisherman, hiker, backpacker, canoeist, all the good stuff. So I got familiar with Writing the Land in about a year ago through a different writers group that I was in, and Liz McLaughlin, who's the organizer of the whole program. And she was in the same writing group, and we got to know each other, and she said, send me some of your work. And so I became one of the poets in the pool, and you've picked me. So thank you very much.
So what do you need from us? We want to.
I have some questions for you for
Mhm.
sure, Mary. I guess along 2 lines. One is, have you been thinking about what you're going to do with my work? in terms of whether it's brochures or website or interpretive panels or any or all of those or other ideas. And then secondly, if you have any particular subject areas that you'd like me to be sure to look in on, I've done some preliminary study of the basin. I understand its geology and its climate, its elevations, its forests and wildlife, at least from a distance. So I've got a general sense of the lay of the land. I plan to come up several times during the year. My work is due September 1st next year. So I'm going to be up the weekend of the 8th and 9th of October so I can capture some fall because I won't have a chance for next fall. And then get up here during the winter and do some snowshoeing and skiing around and come up. I don't know if mud season is if it'll be spring or mud season, we'll see. Play it by ear, but certainly want to get a fishing line at some point. And then by summertime, probably midsummer will be my last visit. That will encapsulate a passing of a year. So so the two questions are, who am I writing for and what am I writing for, I guess? And secondly, do you have any particular focal points for me, whether that be history, civilizations, the ecology, specific plant or animal organisms, the landscape itself, the feelings that the landscape brings up, those just some ideas to think about.
Well, this is a new project to us, so I don't think we have a whole lot of direction for you. The idea was to have poems for this chapter that we're going to have in a book. I don't know if people have any particular input about ideas, things that they want Maddie to focus on. Any suggestions there?
Yeah, I might add to it. Maddie, hi, my name is Steve Aegis. I'm with the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
I work at the Nulhegan Basin Division and manage Conti Refuge divisions for Vermont and New Hampshire. So in my view, from an ecological perspective, what makes the Nulhegan Basin unique is what would be classified as its subboreal habitat that you don't find most other places in the lower 48 states, maybe places higher elevation or northern Maine, but really what makes the Nulhegan Basin unique is this spruce fir bog complex. It certainly is the largest bog complex in the state of Vermont that has not been fragmented or altered in any way. So we can certainly chat offline. I can put my email address in the chat and we can talk about access to some of these locations, yellow bogs, for example, or some of the black spruce bogs, places to visit that make, in my view, from traveling throughout the Nulhegan Basin, make it unique. Also kind of scenic or picturesque places, Lewis Pond Overlook, which is at the northern end of the refuge, especially if you're coming up for fall foliage. If it's a clear day, it's going to be the best view anywhere on the refuge. So again, I'll put my email address in the chat and feel free to reach out and we can have a further discussion offline. Mud season is always a challenge for access. So just a heads up.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Steve.
Mud season's so classic around here. That would be interesting to have some of your poetry about that, I would think.
Yeah.
Lisa, were you going to say something?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say all the things you mentioned are connected. There's a big connection between, everything that's up here. And I think that would be important to have in poetry. Yes, my kitty thinks so too. The history, the ecology, the animals, the flora, the fauna, everything is connected and it's a big circle, the whole circle of the seasons and everything. So that would be interesting to have in poetry. That's all.
Thanks,
And
Lisa.
Bruce, you had your hand up?
Yes. I don't know. Are you familiar with the book Tall Trees, Tough Man?
I've heard of it, but haven't read it, Bruce. I'm making a note.
Okay. Well, here's the title page if you can see it.
There you are.
Yep.
Robert,
Um,
right?
Robert Pike, and though he lived other places most of his life, he had a grandparents who lived right, I think, in Bloomfield, and so what he writes is a very interesting view of the cultural history of this region from, well, close to 100 years ago.
Oh, that's great. When it was all
So
about the
it's an
logging.
interesting read. Yeah.
And I see Dave has his hand up as well.
Yes, hi, Maddie.
Hi, David.
Two suggestions. One, when you come up in October, is to walk the Peanut Dam Road and to see autumn gold. And that is an incredible road. It's about a mile and a half long, and it's lined on both sides with tamarack, which turn gold in the fall. And that'd be a great time to really experience that incredible second burst of autumn foliage. And the other thing that really strikes me when I go into the Nullhegan at night, it's one of the darkest skies in Vermont. It's a 30,000 acre basin, and there's very, very little ambient light, and it's a rarity anywhere in New England, and I think that should be the night sky should be part of the coverage.
Thanks. Sounds like a good place to see the northern lights on the right night.
Yes, if you're in the right location, yes.
Yeah, and I love tamarack, by the way, a very interesting tree, and I'll take you up on that suggestion.
And I'm going to go to Mike Bard because we hadn't heard about him yet.
Yep. Just
Mike.
as a comment, I think, Maddie, a good thing is, and it's kind of a string that maybe goes through a lot of the other comments, is preserving the past to enhance the future of the basin, because there's so much cultural history, from the logging traditions to the camp culture to, again, some of the things Steve said, how unique ecologically the area is, that anything in poetry that can talk about in a poetic way what the past was, so we could make it better for the future, I think is a really important thing, because as we've seen with a lot of other areas, we have lost some of those traditions that we had, and you don't realize how much they're lost until they're gone.
Yeah,
So.
Thank you, Mike. It reminds me of that joke, how many Vermonters does it take to change a light bulb? It takes 4, 1 to turn the bulb and 3 to talk about its past.
And don't forget, if you have passed, you should check into Lisa and Paul Floyd, because they're Abenaki, and that's really the past. A lot of history that would be great to combine into all that. I know, Steve, you were still waiting with your hand up.
Yeah, Lisa and Paul and Mary, you beat me to the chase. I was going to follow up on what Mike said. Historically speaking, I think we need to look back generations, back to Abenaki use of the Nullhegan River. I mean, the name Nullhegan comes from, that the Nullhegan is associated with the Abenaki tribe. And further, to add to that, the Nullhegan Basin is, in my view, unique in that there is no evidence whatsoever of permanent settlement from Europeans. There's no stone walls, there's no barbed wire, there's no evidence whatsoever that it was ever settled permanently by Europeans. So certainly used by Abenaki for generations, but there's all different strings we can talk about. It's an exciting opportunity, and I'm delighted that you're going to be part of it. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And Paul and Lisa, good to get to meet you. The reason I'm coming up the weekend I am is so that I can be in Stowe on the 8th of October, where there's a Nulhegan to-do going on down there. And so my intention was to go there and get some background. And of course, you know, I'm very sensitive to not being maybe I have some Penobscot in me way back. I haven't had the DNA done yet, but
Don't do that. Don't do DNA. That's not the way to do it. It's genealogy.
I'm very deep in the genealogy right now,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And Adams, Matty Adams comes from the presidential lineage, so I can trace that all the way back to those guys.
Yeah,
But
that'll be a
anyways,
good, Stowe's a good place to go. We won't be there this year. We usually are, but Chief Don Stevens will be there, and that will be a great place to learn some history. It's just
good.
too far and
hoping
too
to meet him.
crowded for us.
Okay. Well, I'm